Okay, hello everybody. Those wishing to try out for ATSSB, All-State Trumpet. This is James Keltner, retired band director from Harlingen, and I'm going to attempt to give you some details of how to approach this E minor. It's page 14. Valse lentamente. The tryout, we'll do it one line at a time with a little bit of explanation and some things to look at and maybe work on before you attempt to play it. So this is line one. First thing I want to say is this is full of lip slurs. And so, for instance, on measure 1 and 2, actually 1 and 3, you want this lip slur and then in the second and fourth measure do the same thing but middle finger down. And that'll give you a basis for approaching this line. So here we go with an attempt to play the first line. So here we are back again, and now we're on the second line, and we're going to play the first 4 measures of the second line and stop at the low E, and we'll get the last measure in combination with the first half or so of the third line. So as you're practicing this song, you've got to resist the temptation to play triplets, because it looks like triplets. If you go, of course that's wrong. So you want to make sure you're going 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and all the way through the whole piece. Okay, we get to the third measure, we have an X. X means double sharp. So instead of playing that C open or first and second or whatever, you want to play it as a D. It is basically plain old first finger D, and then the next note's a D sharp. And then the next difficulty is slurring from that D sharp to the G. So let's look at the third measure. And after the high G, you have to tone the F sharp, and it has the staccato marking on it. We're not going to play it short, we're going to play it separated, and then we're going to do a decrescendo down to the low E. So here's an attempt at the second line, first 4 measures. Okay, so here we go with the third phrase, I guess. We're going to start last measure on the second line and do the first 3 measures on the third line. So once again, watch the slurs, make sure you're playing 1 and 2 and 3 and first difficulty really is the second measure on the third line, where you have to slur from E to D. And of course you get all that noise in there. So that's going to take a lot of work, and hopefully I'll get it right when I play it. But that is it's a slur. It's marked as a slur. You got to do it as a slur. If you don't slur it, in my opinion, it's a mistake. Then we get to the end of the second measure, and what you have there is a dotted 8th note C. Doesn't really look like it. You barely see the dot. It's, in my opinion, not good printing. But there is a dot on that C, so it's a dotted 8th note followed by a 16th note. And the 16th note appears to have a staccato marking under it. I believe it is. Again, we're not going to play it really short. The third measure, we've got to go. Okay, and that's a pretty big jump going up to that B. So here's an attempt at starting again on the last measure of the second line and going up to that B, third measure on the third line. So here we go. Oh, by the way, I'm going to go ahead and put my third valve slide out now in preparation for that low D to tune it, because I don't want to have to be worrying about that when I'm trying to do that slur and kicking that out all at the same time. It's just too much complication. I like things simple, so here we go. Okay, we're starting measure 4 of the third line, and you got to start softly, crescendo up to the G, decrescendo down, same exact thing again in the fifth measure. Then you get into measure 4 and 5, which really have some difficulties. So as an example, let's do measure 4. Okay, then do the exact same again. Then we get to the fourth line, and it's got an outline between line 4 and 5 that has a high A and then a G and then an F sharp in measure 2 of the fourth line. So I would do this just so you can get it in your hearing. So you have the A, 2 notes later the G, and then 5 notes later the F sharp. But those are the target notes that I'm going to try to hit as I'm playing. And I'm just going to do the last 2 measures of the third line, first 2 measures of the fourth line. I'm going to hold the F sharp, and then we'll continue from there on the next little bit. So let's give this a shot here. Okay, now we're continuing with the F sharp, measure 2 of line 4. The difficulties of slurring downwards, basically, while changing fingers. Then interrupt the slur by tonguing the E into the D sharp, 2 and 3, then F sharp, B, D sharp, all second finger. Then the skip from the D sharp to the G sharp is a large interval. And then you've got lip slurs in the following measure, the last measure of line 4, another lip slur, line 5, first measure. So the lip slurs you could practice. Practice the D sharp to G sharp. Which presents its own difficulties. Then, the last measure of the fourth line. And then you get to the fifth line. So we have lots of difficulties with the slurring. Articulation, there's some fingering issues if you're not paying attention to all the sharps. So next we'll give it a try. So here we go, starting with the F sharp. Okay, now to finish up line 5, we again have more lip slurs, and the biggest problem is going from C sharp to G sharp. Now, the third measure of the fifth line is kind of interesting, because if you get past all of the written stuff, it's first finger, second finger, first finger, second finger, first finger, second finger. Okay, but it's the slurring. Okay, and then the last measure has a slur that goes. Okay, so by the time I added out some of the mistakes, hopefully you'll have an idea how to approach this. I would also mention that you could add crescendos, decrescendos following the line of the melody. In other words, as the notes go up, get a little bit louder. As the notes go down, get a little bit softer, because it shows you that in the first line, but it doesn't do it in the second line, third line. At the end of the third line, yes. Fourth line, nothing. Fifth line, nothing. But I would certainly follow the suggestion of the dynamic interpretation following the melodic line that it gives you in the first line. I think that would help make it more interesting, and certainly might help your score. So hopefully these little bits help, and of course it was not perfect. Would not even come close, but just an idea to help you get started. So best of luck and hope for your success. Thanks.